Well, hey, everybody. This is my first ever recording, so please be patient with me. I want to make a couple of disclaimers before I even start reading and say that, number one, I am recording this on my Google Pixel phone and know nothing about recording, so don't expect anything fancy. I got nothing for you on that account. And number two, I'm reading a book aloud. It's a chapter book. And I know nothing at all about copyright law. So, while I'm not making any money on this, I don't expect to be put in Facebook jail. However, if I get put there, I hope someone bakes me a Facebook cake and puts a Facebook file in it so you can bust me out of there. The book I'm reading is called There's a Boy in the Girl's Bathroom. It's probably backwards because that's how it looks on my phone right now. And it's a book that I read when I was a kid, and I really liked it then, and I think it's still a great book. So I'm going to go ahead and read this one to Griffin and Silas tonight, and I'll read it to you as well. I'll probably just read for maybe 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes at the most, and then we'll read some more again tomorrow. If you have anything you want to say afterwards, make a comment in the section on the bottom, or ask a question, or just chat about it, you're more than welcome to. This book is by Louis Sachar. Actually, it's not Sachar. I just looked on Google because I didn't know if I've been pronouncing his name right all this time or not. It's actually Sachar. It's spelled S-A-C-H-A-R, and it's spelled Sachar like cracker, is what he says in a phone interview. So, let's dig right in. Chapter 1. Bradley Chalkers sat at his desk in the back of the classroom. Last seat, last row. No one sat at the desk next to him or at the one in front of him. He was an island. If he could have, he would have sat in the closet. Then he could shut the door so he wouldn't have to listen to Mrs. Ebel. He didn't think she'd mind. She'd probably like it better that way, too. So would the rest of the class. All in all, he thought everyone would be much happier if he sat in the closet. But unfortunately, his desk didn't fit. "Class," said Mrs. Ebel, "I would like you all to meet Jeff Fishkin. Jeff has just moved here from Washington, D.C., which, as you know, is our nation's capital." Bradley looked up at the new kid who was standing in the front of the room next to Mrs. Ebel. "Why don't you tell the class a little bit about yourself, Jeff?" urged Mrs. Ebel. The new kid shrugged. "There's no reason to be shy," said Mrs. Ebel. The new kid mumbled something, but Bradley couldn't hear what it was. "Have you ever been to the White House, Jeff?" Mrs. Ebel asked. "I'm sure the class would be very interested to hear about that." "No, I've never been there," the new kid said very quickly as he shook his head. Mrs. Ebel smiled at him. "Well, I guess we'd better find you a place to sit." She looked around the room. I don't see any place except, I suppose you could sit there at the back." "No, not next to Bradley," a girl in the front row exclaimed. "At least it's better than in front of Bradley," said the boy next to her. Mrs. Ebel frowned. She turned to Jeff. "I'm sorry, but there are no other empty desks." "I don't mind where I sit," Jeff mumbled. "Well, nobody likes sitting there," said Mrs. Ebel. "That's right," Bradley spoke up. "Nobody likes sitting next to me." He smiled a strange smile. He stretched his mouth so wide it was hard to tell whether it was a smile or a frown. He stared at Jeff with bulging eyes as Jeff awkwardly sat down next to him. Jeff smiled back at him, so he looked away. As Mrs. Ebel began the lesson, Bradley took out a pencil and a piece of paper and scribbled. He scribbled most of the morning, sometimes on the paper and sometimes on his desk. Sometimes he scribbled so hard that his pencil point broke. Every time that happened, he laughed. Then he'd tape the broken point to one of the gobs of junk in his desk, sharpen his pencil, and scribble again. His desk was full of little wads of torn paper, pencil points, chewed erasers, and other unrecognizable stuff, all taped together. Mrs. Ebel handed back a language test. "Most of you did very well," she said. "I was very pleased. There were 14 A's and the rest B's. Of course, there was one F, but..." She shrugged her shoulders. Bradley held up his test for everyone to see and smiled, that same distorted smile. As Mrs. Ebel went over the correct answers with the class, Bradley took out his pair of scissors and very carefully cut his test paper into tiny squares. When the bell rang for recess, he put on his red jacket and he walked outside alone. "Hey, Bradley, wait up!" somebody called after him. Startled, he turned around. Jeff, the new kid, hurried alongside him. "Hi," said Jeff. Bradley stared at him in amazement. Jeff smiled. I really don't mind sitting next to you, he said. Really? Bradley didn't know what to say. I have been to the White House, Jeff admitted. If you want, I'll tell you about it. Bradley thought for a moment, and then he said, give me $1 or I'll spit on you. Chapter 2. There are some kids, you can tell just by looking at them, who are good spitters. That's probably the best way to describe Bradley Chalkers. He looked like a good spitter. He was the oldest and toughest looking kid in Mrs. Ebel's class. He was a year older than the other kids. That was because he had taken the 4th grade twice. Now he was in the 5th grade for the first, but probably not the last time. Jeff stared at him, and then he gave him $1, and he ran away. Bradley laughed to himself, then watched all the other kids having fun. When he returned to class after recess, he was surprised Mrs. Ebel didn't say anything to him. He figured that Jeff would probably tell on him and that he'd have to give back the $1. He sat at his desk in the back of the room. Last seat, last row. He's afraid to tell on me, he decided. He knows if he tells on me, I'll punch his face in. He laughed at himself. He ate lunch alone, too. As he walked in from lunch, Mrs. Ebel called him to her desk. Who, me? He asked. He glared at Jeff, who was already sitting down. I didn't do anything. Did you give my note to your mother? Asked Mrs. Ebel. Huh? What note? You never gave me a note. Mrs. Ebel sighed. Yes, I did, Bradley. In fact, I gave you 2 notes because you said the first one was stolen. Oh, that's right, he said. I gave it to her a long time ago. Mrs. Ebel eyed him suspiciously. Bradley, I think it's very important for your mother to come tomorrow. Tomorrow was parents' conference day. She can't come, said Bradley. She's sick. You never gave her the note, did you? Call her doctor if you don't believe me. The school has just hired a new counselor, said Mrs. Ebel, and I think it's very important that your mother meet her. Oh, they already met, said Bradley. They go bowling together. I'm trying to help you, Bradley. Call the bowling alley if you don't believe me. Okay, Bradley, said Mrs. Ebel, and she let the matter drop. Bradley returned to his seat. Glad that was over. He glanced at Jeff, surprised Jeff hadn't told on him. As he scribbled, he kept thinking about what Jeff had said to him. Hey, Bradley, wait up. Hi. I don't mind sitting next to you, really. I have been to the White House. If you want, I'll tell you about it. It confused him. He understood it when the other kids were mean to him. It didn't bother him. He simply hated them. As long as he hated them, it didn't matter what they thought of him. That's why he had threatened to spit on Jeff. He had to hate Jeff before Jeff hated him. But now he was confused. Hey, Bradley, wait up. Hi, I don't mind sitting next to you, really? The words rolled around in his head and banged against his brain. After school, he followed Jeff out the door. Hey, Jeff, he called. Wait up. Jeff turned and then he started to run, but Bradley was faster. He caught up to Jeff at the corner of the school building. I don't have any more money, Jeff said nervously. I'll give you $1 if you'll be my friend, said Bradley. He held out the $1 that Jeff had given him earlier. Jeff slowly reached out and he grabbed it. Bradley smiled his same twisted smile. Have you ever been to the White House? He asked. Yes, said Jeff. Me too, said Bradley. And he turned and ran home. All right, that's where we're going to stop today. If you have any comments you want to make, if you think it's going to be a good book or a lousy book, or if you just want to say if you think Bradley and Jeff are actually going to be friends or not, go ahead and make a comment and we can chat about it next time. And we'll read some more tomorrow.